I'm going to record a short one of these. Um, at the time of this recording, the previous part, which I recorded over a week ago, is stuck in processing by YouTube and is stuck at 95% processing. And this is the second time I've tried to upload it, and it still got stuck at 95% processing. This suggests that there's something corrupted about the video file. However, the video plays just fine in Windows. And so either there's some sort of error correction in Windows that YouTube doesn't have, or YouTube somehow has a bug going on, which most of YouTube's bugs, they get fixed pretty quickly. However, for the time being, it's kind of annoying. I just got done doing some Googling of the ETH hash. So, if you don't necessarily know what the ETH hash is, the second largest cryptocurrency, at least according to Wikipedia, is called Ethereum. And how cryptocurrencies work is, to add a new entry to the blockchain, you have to do something called a proof of work, which is you do some sort of hash algorithm on the previous entry of the blockchain. And once you do the proof of work and make it such that you've done that hash on the previous entry, if you were to change the previous entry, it would no longer agree with the hash at the start of the next one. And so you can't, and so then the system would kick out your change. So you can't go back and change a previous entry in the blockchain. You can only add new entries later in the blockchain. In order to do that, you have to perform the hash. So for Bitcoin, the hash is called SHA-256. And you do that hash twice. You do a hash on the previous blockchain entry, I believe, and then you do it on the hash. So you do a hash on the hash. A hash just makes like a 256-bit code that represents like the data that you hashed. If you change one bit in the data, so the data still pretty much resembles the previous version of the data, the hash will change like almost entirely. And so in order for the hash to be correct, your data pretty much has to be perfect. So you can use it for encryption keys and such. The thing with the Bitcoin though is the last bit that you have to include in whatever goes into your hash, which I believe, if I remember correctly, I'm not super certain about this, don't quote me on it, it's the previous blockchain entry. Last, I believe it's 8 bits. Well, I think it's probably 64-bit. I don't know. So last few bits, however many bits there are. I think it was actually 8 hexadecimal numbers. So that's 128. Now I forget how many bits. My memory's not very good about that. Is the nonce, and so you have to. And the nonce, there's a correct answer for the hash, but you don't know what it is. And you have to guess the nonce that will get you the correct hash. And the only way to do that, well, you know what the correct hash is, but so I guess you might think there's a way to back solve it, but it's actually way faster to just try all the nonces until you get the nonce that works. Actually, I don't know if it's even possible. Because, well, it's not even possible because hashes are not like the hashing is not unique. So, given a hash, it's impossible to know what it was a hash of because there's multiple things it could be a hash of. So it's not a solvable problem the other way. So you have to brute force it. You have to guess the nonces until you find the right nonce that will allow you to then add an entry to the blockchain. So you're doing SHA-256 twice over and over again with multiple different nonces. And when I was at the university, I had a big long homework assignment. They called it a project, but it's really an overglorified homework because they told you exactly what you needed to do. To write something that would perform SHA-256 twice, like as if I was doing a Bitcoin hash, on an FPGA, so I had to write it in System Verilog. Now, of course, as you can tell, I can't even remember how many bits the nonce is, so I don't my memory on that kind of thing isn't very good, but that's what I know about cryptocurrencies. Now, Ethereum is big in the news because it's a little bit different than Bitcoin in several ways, but it has its own hash. The motivation behind, but it has the ETH hash is supposed to make it so you have to spend more time reading things from memory as opposed to doing computations for something like that. I don't know. I shouldn't spout stuff off the top of my head I don't know much or remember much about. To make it such that it's more difficult to perform the hash with a custom ASIC. Because the SHA-256 hash that you use to mine Bitcoins, it's easy to manufacture a custom ASIC that will do it much faster than even an FPGA can. And that makes it such that the ordinary average Joe has a really hard time getting into the mining, because making an ASIC requires you to lay lots of money. I don't know how many. I thought it was actually millions of dollars for a custom ASIC. It's probably only thousands now that I think about it, but it's a lot of money for a custom ASIC. And so then the entry level, the entry for Bitcoin mining, the starting stuff you have to pay to get into it is extremely high. So Ethereum, because of the way they've designed the hash, it's cryptocurrency, is the second largest cryptocurrency that can be mined using a GPU. Which is kind of cool. If you have a GPU, nice high-end GPU, then you can go ahead and mine some Ethereum with it. I don't know if there's any prepackaged software you can download, or whether or not you have to use CUDA or PyCUDA or Numba or something to code up the hash. But the code's posted online on the Ethereum wiki on how you would do that. And then you just leave it running, and then it hashes Ethereum. Unfortunately, there's this economic consequence, and that is, if you have one GPU, you can mine Ethereum at a certain rate. If you have two GPUs, you can mine twice as much Ethereum. If you have three GPUs, you can mine 3 times as much as Ethereum. Well, people who buy GPUs just to play video games, well, they only really need 1 or 2 GPUs. And SLI right now is only available on the 3090, and the 3090 is very expensive and not really that popular with gamers, as I hear. Although it seems pretty popular to me. So people say it's not popular, but it sure is. If you're trying to buy one, good luck trying to actually get one. Anyway, so because SLI NVIDIA is not supporting it anymore, except on their very highest in gaming card, gamers are only going to buy one GPU. And that's good enough to play the games they want to play until that no games come out with higher graphic requirements than the previous generation. Or they want to play games with a higher resolution monitor. Or something like that. So, however, and 2 GPUs doesn't really help you. You can't game better with 2 GPUs as opposed to 1. However, with mining cryptocurrency, the more GPUs you have, the more cryptocurrency you can mine. So, naturally, that makes it so that if you're trying to mine cryptocurrency, you're not just trying to buy a GPU, you're trying to buy as many GPUs as you can and connect them together. Meanwhile, people like me are trying to buy just one GPU and can't do it. Whereas miners are buying multiples. And I go, well, how can they buy it and you can't? Well, I don't know exactly all the techniques that were used during the Bitcoin mining craze when the 1080s just came out. That was a mess. People said that they managed to get pallets full of them off the trucks before they even arrived at retail. But keep this in mind that cryptocurrency mining, of course, makes money. And So let's say you buy a GPU and it pays, once it pays for itself, then it starts making money. So if you buy a GPU from a scalper for an excessive price, well, if you mine enough with it, you can make up the scalper price, right? So there's a tendency, if you mine, to be more willing to buy from a scalper than if you game. Even though there's a lot of reasons not to buy from a scalper, you're actually hurting yourself there too in a philosophical way. But there's tendency, I hear that there's a tendency for miners to be more likely to pay more for GPUs. Also, people who buy GPUs just to, game or do science with them will have a tendency not to buy a bot for $75. That's how much bounce alerts cost, I believe, in order to buy GPUs, because that's another $75 they have to pay on top of the price of the GPU that they're going to buy, right? However, if you're going to mine with the GPUs, you don't really care whether or not you're going to pay $75. You care more of, can I, by mining, recoup that $75? So they're more likely to buy bots to try to get them. And we just somehow have this notion when it comes to buying these hard to get electronic items that once people start getting them, once people succeed in actually buying some of these things, then now they have it, so now they'll get out of the game, right? So this is going to date this video, but this is like during the 30 series GPU crisis, it'll be irrelevant to people in the future. We have this hope, people are like me trying to buy GPUs and can't, that once people get them, that it'll be easier to buy them because there'll be less demand because people already have them, right? But with mining demand, you want more because the more you have, the more you can mine, and so you don't just get out of the game once you've gotten the GPU you want. You keep trying to buy more. You keep dipping in for seconds and thirds and fourths and 20ths. So at, catering parties and potlucks and things, we say, don't go for seconds until everyone is at least served first, right? Because it's not really fair, so to speak, if one person gets to eat two helpings, whereas some people don't get to eat any. That's just like a societal norm. However, there's a tendency to kind of hate on or really look down upon people who try to buy multiples of something where it's really hard to get one of them. It is kind of like a moral or ethical kind of being a cool dude issue. Basically, if you try to buy more than one 30 series GPU right now, you are a cool dude. A cool dude. You're a very mean and nasty person. Just putting that out there. If you're not familiar, cool dude is like from some forum website that may not be named, the word censor. If you were to type in something like jerk, even the verb jerk, like to jerk, which means to move something in this like violent manner, it would censor it by replacing it with cool dude. So now if you say cool dude, that implies it's like an insult. That implies that somebody is mean. If they are something you do not want to be, if you are a cool dude. You do not want to be called a cool dude. Anyway. That's another problem, is like we expect gamers, once they get their GPU, to be like, okay, I got mine. Now I'll just leave it for other people to get. But then some of them may actually turn around and try to scalp. It's like, oh, I figured out how to buy one. Let me try to get another one and resell it for twice as much as it's worth, and that'll pay for it, plus the GPU that I bought. And now I don't have to pay for, now I break even. try not to get into the scalping rant too much because that very first episode of the World's Hardest Game 3 had the scalping rant in it. Something though to add to that though is I made this there ought to be a law comments. But since then I've talked about clearly defined things and how you would I don't know much about law and legal language, but how you would word that is somewhat of a quandary. Because imagine a law that said you couldn't resell things. It's like you have this thing, it's yours, but you're not allowed to sell it. Sorry. That's kind of a dumb law, right? Or like, you're not allowed to resell something unless you are a registered retailer. Oh, great, so now you created paperwork and bureaucracy. You're not allowed to sell this item for more than this price. Well, great, price control. You know how that ends. So there doesn't really seem to be a way to sensically write something that would be able to levy punishment on somebody who buys something purely to resell it and purely to artificially increase its scarcity in order to resell it for more than it would be worth if they and the others collectively trying to resell it did not artificially inflate scarcity. It is similar to market manipulation, but I don't even know if I'm sure if market manipulation should be a crime. So trying to go with the excuse of, well, it's market manipulation is like, well, it's more like just being unfair. And you could say life isn't fair, but that's what bullies on the playground say when they want to be unfair. It's their excuse. Yes, life isn't fair. That doesn't give you grounds to justify you taking actions that are not fair. But if you didn't hear the scalping rant in the first episode, basically, we kind of expect money to work like this, that it's an exchange of value. So, for example, I pay you money, and you give me a good or service in return. So, whether or not that service is getting in viewers to look at ads, so that you can try to sell your product, or is food, or is electronics, or is it fixing your plumbing, or installing a cable inside your wall, or so on. Whereas when you scalp, if you succeed in doing this, you end up being paid money for doing somebody a disservice. Now, it doesn't really make any sense for you to get paid for inconveniencing somebody. That's weird and backwards. That's kind of what stealing is. It's a little different than stealing, because theoretically someone could not buy the graphics card. But when they do, and inevitably somebody does, because they're stupid or they just don't care, then you took money from them by means of doing them a disservice. You ripped them off, essentially. So this is not a moral gray area. This is most definitely a moral pitch black area. It is just straight up wrong. What you would do about it is not very clear. I guess you could punch them in the face, but you don't know who they are, and make sure no one's looking first. That's the thing with with human evil, is that they tend to act like... You have a tendency to act like other people's consciousnesses don't even really have any hard evidence that they even exist. The only conscience that you experience is your own. And the only pain you experience is your own. and the only pleasure you experience as your own. Therefore, the pain and pleasure experienced by other people may as well not exist. You will never experience it, so why do you care about it? Until we decide we want revenge, because now we count on the other person experiencing pain and that existing, and I want to see it happen as if it were a real thing that would exist, and then try to gain pleasure from it. So the heart of man is desperately wicked and beyond cure, and most importantly, who can understand it? Meaning that it's not particularly rational in the way it works. It just does whatever is evil. And if that isn't really self-consistent with how it is evil in other ways, then it doesn't matter. It'll just do it because it's evil. And the answer is, well, I'm a bad person. I did something you say is bad. So, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything about it. And so, I don't have to care. Right? I don't experience your pain. Your pain might as well then not exist. By the way, I don't actually act like this, just so you know. This is not a manifesto. I'm describing wicked people, not me. That being said, though, there isn't anything necessarily wrong with doing Ethereum mining, unless you, care about power consumption. It's just that Ethereum mining gives you motivation to buy more than just just one GPU. And so it makes GPU shortages worse than they already are. So when companies like Zotac and Newegg post tweets about mining, the down comments underneath those tweets are extremely bitter. And when Newegg did it and when Zotac did it, Newegg, they linked to an article, and Zotac, they actually posted a picture of somebody's mining rig in an attempt to advertise Zotac's GPUs for mining. They later deleted said tweets, likely because they saw the PR nightmare that was coming. However, people aren't very clear about why they're complaining. They're saying, I can't even get one GPU, and you are posting images of somebody with 20. One YouTuber pointed that out, but Twitter comments tend to be always not very well thought out, and the reasoning not very well presented. I'm spending a lot of time in this room. I will have to come back to this room later, because the room just to the left of it is the final room of this level. So I don't actually have to get all of them while I'm here, but if I don't, I'll have to come back for them later. So try to get at least some of these yellow circles. There. It's a deceptively easy looking room because the enemies seem to move slowly, but all the stationary ones really do their toll. Like, you see that more often I'm hitting the stationary ones trying to dodge the moving ones as opposed to actually hitting the moving ones. To try to wrap up the hose rinks thing, which I didn't really want to bring up again, but I thought of more things. Basically, it boils down to the contest took place on TTV's own private website, which they bought with their own money. And either when they had this decided to take a vote whether or not they should have cannon contests, people didn't really care about this issue. or they just didn't think about it. Mostly, they probably didn't really care about this issue. But because the contest took place on TTV's own site, with its own like rules and management by their own staff, the way that was conducted was subjected to pretty much entirely their discretion. Now they'll claim that they try to take input from other people in the community, but let's be honest, like someone like me would have much less say on what happens in that canon contest than Meso, for example, because he's the one who's like part of paying the money to keep that site up. So it created somewhat of a power system thing where people didn't really, you got comments like, you didn't listen to the Bionicle community, because people started to realize that the way this would be conducted, someone like, say, Meso, for example, would have way more sway on how it would be done than any other person, like just random Bionicle fans. And it's hard to accept the idea of a power structure of sorts in Bionicle fan base, because it's Bionicle fans. Why does that need any governance? What makes the people governing it special? And I guess, quoting the Bible again for the second time in this recording, money is the answer for everything. You can even buy canon contest rules. So you often hear TTV compare the Bionicle fanbase to other ones online, and they'll say Bionicle had a centralized place called BZ Power where if you wanted to talk about Bionicle, you would go, right? Whereas some fanbase like Ninjago does not have a centralized place you go. You do it on, say, Reddit or Twitter or something like that. You don't have a specialized Ninjago forum like analogous to BZ Power. And I don't know if they really admired that or not. I personally don't, because if there's only one place where you can talk about Bionicle, then in order to talk about Bionicle on the internet and actually people hear you, you have to be subjected to the arbitrary rules decided on by whoever owns that website, which they have every right to make rules because they own it. But those rules tend to be arbitrary and made in certain ways because the people making them want to feel important. You have to deal with this in order to be able to do this conversation. Whereas if you're talking on Twitter, you only have to deal with the rules of Twitter, which can be a problem to some people, but they're much more loose because Twitter has competition in other social media platforms than, say, something like BZ Power, where they can do things like don't post links to other websites, period, in their rules, which was absurd. And TTV themselves experienced this whole, like, certain people have power because they own the site nonsense. If you've ever... I don't know if the video is still up because the controversy is kind of blown over, but a video that they made, I think, titled Response to the Tumblr Incident. If you haven't listened to that, it might still be up, I'm not sure. Where TTV was the victim of the BZP power system there. So, but they seem to kind of admire that whole centralized place thing because they took the initiative to actually create the TTV message boards. And when they did that, they equipped the TTV message boards with some arbitrary rules, such as their arbitrary trust levels, which means that you can't make certain kinds of posts, do certain kinds of things until you have viewed, like, physically, like, viewed enough pages on the website. Like, literally. Like, until you've spent enough time on the site. So I encourage wasting time, that's for sure. And that really put me off making account of TTV message boards because, like, this is absurd. and arbitrary and random. As my antennas teacher said, there was a man who set out several giant jugs of water along a popular but parched desert tradeway. And he told the passerbys, there's free water for you, come here and you can drink it. And there would be multiple jugs set out there for them that would seem like for them to drink. And they would go to drink, they would take him up on his offer and they'd go drink from a jug. But every time they did that, he would tell that person, no, don't drink from that jug, drink from that one. And then they would drink from the other one. And they would just do that to every single person that walked by. And the reason why they did that was because it just made them feel important. And that's kind of how I feel a lot of things. It seems that whoever came up with them just because they wanted to feel powerful. They wanted to make rules to feel powerful and feel important. And it can happen in politics as well. Really silly laws being made because people want to leave their mark behind, right? They want, a law with their name on it for the time they've spent as a legislator, which promotes wanton, stupid lawmaking. Because for some reason people just want to feel powerful. I don't know. It's just this thing that's wrong with people. They want to control things. As I said, I kind of went off left on a tangent and 2 parts ago where I started trying to relate this stuff to rules creep in sports. Which is kind of a different matter. I mean, it's related to the idea of having rules that aren't well defined. But I also sucked in the whole concept of making rules because you're trying to force something to look the way you envisioned it being. Even if there isn't really a good rule set that would make it that way. Sometimes the fans or the promoters will make the sport want the sport to look a different way than the athletes will try to make it look in order to win. Or people want the cannon contest to look a certain way. It's different than maybe how the fan base would vote in it. Or make mocks for it. And I won't necessarily not try to mine Ethereum with my graphics card. However, I probably won't because I don't have the time to invest in that kind of thing. So I don't know how much I'm going to have to code to make it work. And I don't know if I really want to bother putting in the time to do that. But it's sort of this logic of, well, I'm going to have a graphics card anyway, hopefully. So, If I have it anyway. I did get the Wi-Fi thing finally resolved, though. Maybe. For some reason, these Wi-Fi adapters, if you install them in a desktop, they seem to be less sensitive than they are in the typical laptop. Maybe it's because Intel doesn't believe it has to be as sensitive in a desktop than in a laptop. That being said, it does. So, the Wi-Fi does not reach across the house to where I want to put my desktop. Even if I put a laptop there, I get perfectly fine signal strength. So, that's a bit obnoxious. So I'm gonna have to buy a booster or something. Or move the router around or some obnoxious thing. Or buy yet another antenna that's more sensitive. I don't know if sensitive is the word you use for an antenna, but higher amplitude, just a bigger antenna, more signal to noise ratio. I meant to say ratio. Seems like I'm gonna record an entire episode where I'm in like one room the entire time. This room takes a while, I guess. You know what, phooey. We need some variety. So, let's mix it up. Let's go to the next room. Oops. Just usual jog problems. It's just they make it so that you have to go 3 wide instead of 2. Fry myself a little bit with some of this action. Ah. You just have to go for it. You can't hold back there. again, just something that The Verge was actually right about, and that is you want to have built-in Wi-Fi. Weren't right about anything else, but you do want to have built-in Wi-Fi. Ugh. The adapters are a pain. As for the recording and stuff, still a bit of a... I still haven't started the thumbnails yet. I should do that before I start the serious recordings. So, one thing I could try using is... just Clip Studio, for which I have a license. Because that's something you buy once. You don't pay a subscription for Clip Studio. It's only $30 for one on disc. However, I have to be worried about resolution when I try to paste stuff into Clip Studio. That's always kind of comical when you try to do that. You're like, oh, it fills up like 4 times my canvas size. And then just merge layers. Or I probably could use something called ImageMagick. It's like ImageMagick, but with a CK. So it's like ImageMagick K, which is this command line interface thing for merging images together. So if I want to put like a series title and a number on a video, I can use this to, impose it, or put, screenshots at funny angles or whatever. And it does have some sort of GUI, which doesn't talk about in the documentation, but I can't figure out how to use the GUI. So ImageMagick is the free and open source way to go for the image editing. And then you can utilize it in MoviePie, but I haven't been able to figure out how to get into my path correctly so that it can actually be used. But I have to add Anaconda to my global system path, which I haven't ever done because Anaconda says it doesn't recommend you do it when you install that. So, complicated stuff. Of course, you can always buy, the Adobe Creative Suite. But that's like so much a month. So, I know that Premiere is $21 per month. And I really don't care what that number is. I want to care how much over the decades, what I'd be investing in it, to see whether or not it would pay for itself, right? So, if it's $21 a month, that makes it $240 plus 110 plus 12, so like $252 per year, which is about $2,500 per decade, not including sales tax, which for me would be around 7%. So I'd be investing about $2K in 10 years worth of Premiere, and it'll probably go up with inflation, but then it would be inflation, so that would be worth less, so whatever. And I have to think, well, is that actually like a good investment? Would I be able to get 2K's worth of value out of it over that decade? Especially, I'd have to learn how to use it effectively, as well as just have it. Like, it's not like you have the software, then suddenly everything will turn out great, right? You have to learn how to use the software. It seems like right now the answer is no. So I'm still going the free and open source route, which still is its drawbacks in that MoviePie doesn't use anything like Numba. It doesn't use a CPU Python package, because there's different CPU Python packages depending for different kinds of GPUs. That's what I'm trying to say. There's different GPU Python packages depending on what kind of GPU you have. And so, as a result, you can't just make a Python thing that just utilizes your GPU that easily. So it renders everything on the CPU and it's slow, and it maxes out your CPU. Or doesn't necessarily max it out, but it brings it like over 70% utilization trying to do a render. I still don't know how to change the settings of the output frame rate and resolution. I know that the output usually has a smaller file size than the input, but I don't know why and what exactly it's crunching down when I do the render. It's also, you can do pretty much anything in MoviePy. Maybe even more things than you can do using something like Premiere. However, there's a learning curve to all of it, and there's a lot of effort put into the coding to make it happen. So it might be easier to do in Premiere than the things that you can do. Now, it is using Python. It is very easy to specifically concatenate videos together, and then compose them in a split-screen fashion. Compose audio, clip out parts of a video, put audio starting at any time in various random places throughout the video, and things like that. Those are very easy. Effects or like flashing text is a bit harder. You have to use ImageMagick, you have to get it in your path, and you have to sometimes you have to deal with putting a border, you have to deal with masking. That stuff is trickier. Besides, I don't know why people do the border thing. Well, maybe it has to do with copyright or something, but I hate it, so I try not to ever do that with mine. You won't ever, my videos, you'll never see a game that's like really small within the video. It's surrounded by some logo border. No, like, why would you do that? Yes, you. You know who I'm talking about. The art was good, but why? Why take the size penalty? Yeah. Now, sometimes you do it intentionally because of copyright, but it's been done for other reasons besides just copyright dodging. Ah! So close. No, because I've told you about a million times, it's a Ford. Ugh. The plan is, I guess, when I'm done with all the Bionicle games, is to, once I get all my stuff ready to go, is to actually go through them again and actually have a well thumbnailed numbered series that just concatenates all of the games into one series called like Bionicle Games Review or something. It just goes through all of them in chronological order. What I'm doing now is not in chronological order. And that will be interlaced with whatever other things I'm recording at the same time, like once a week, as opposed to whatever I'm doing now, which is once a day, provided that YouTube will process things, which it doesn't sometimes. And uploads getting stuck and all those problems. Vnog Part 8 still getting a bunch of random views. In the first like in that World's Hardest Game 1 recording, like I opened it by saying that Markiplier recorded the World's Hardest Game 1 with a bad aspect ratio. And it kind of sounds bad when I say things like that. It sounds bad when I say pretty much half the things I say. Come across kind of calloused often. Obviously, I would say something like that because I'm trying to put other people down in order to feel better about myself. But you can kind of, like, that's honestly what's going on there. But you can kind of think of it as, I make a lot of mistakes while recording, right? I record bad audio, do bad cropping, bad resolution, not enough frame rate, not good game organization. And so I can do things like, I'll do things like look at, say, someone like Markiplier, who's super popular, and look at one of his videos that has 7 million views and go, on that video, he messed up the aspect ratio, but he's still super popular, makes a living off YouTube, and got 7 million views on it. So, it's okay to do stuff like, I don't know, mess up an aspect ratio. Or I look at, Messo's Mistoran Escape gameplay, and he does it on a computer that's super laggy, and he crops it wrong, such that he crops off the top and bottom of the game. And I go, well, he had bad frame rates, and now his commentary is obviously a lot funnier than mine, so, I mean, I can't really make that up, but, he had bad frame rate, and he had bad cropping, and he's a lot more popular than me, and it worked for him, so, that helps me feel better about myself in that way. It's like, oh, it's okay if I make mistakes occasionally. All these people make mistakes. But just try not to make mistakes. But if you do, don't sweat it too much. Because they all make mistakes. They all, as Felix would say, post-cringe. So, it's okay to post some cringe every once in a while. But if I had to choose, of course I would choose to not cringe. Obviously. Sometimes, it's just cringe. You just gotta own the cringe. I try not to put other people down to try to make me feel better about myself, because although everybody does that, it's not good to do that, and everybody doing it does not justify anything. So, try not to talk like that in the future. But I did talk like that then, for some reason. It's like, half the things you say in your life you regret saying. Pretty much. Yeah, like pretty much half. If not more than half. Me, it's probably like 2/3. No, never mind. It's like 90%. And they say sayings like that, right? Even a fool will be thought as wise if he kept his mouth shut. It's very true. So I do these videos where it's like I have to try to think of things to talk about for an hour while recording, while playing this game. I just go, I gotta say a bunch of things. And inevitably, the result is saying a bunch of stupid things. Because that's what you do when you try to say a lot of things. So it's best just not to say things. Okay, it appears I'm going to have to end this one at this very awkward spot where I made pretty much zero progress. So it's like a zero progress recording. And I'll try to make some progress on the next one. It's like a stall. Okay. If you actually watched all that, thank you for watching it.